President Trump has just visited Scotland. He's raised a lot of questions about the UK-US special relationship. What does his visit mean for the future cooperation of the two states?
Well, I think what you've got to always remember is whoever is the occupant of the Oval Office or number 10 Downing Street, the institutional relationship between our two nations runs incredibly deep on security, on intelligence, on economic cooperation. The United Kingdom has been steadfast in its standing side by side with the United States. I do think that Keir Starmer has been able to develop a very strong working relationship with President Trump, albeit, as President Trump himself mentioned, they come from very different political traditions, political points of view. But I think Keir has done a pretty good job in being able to, one, deliver a trade deal that is far more advantageous to the UK than the European-US trade deal. And that's gone down well here in the United Kingdom.
And are you surprised by the level, well, I won't call it a bromance between them, but I suppose the level of friendship that Trump and Keir Starmer have shown?
I think the one thing that people recognize in President Trump is his human side. And sometimes he can, be, I guess, very straightforward, if I can describe it as that, blunt, slightly shocking to the sort of English mentality or the British mentality. But I think actually that human side of him has made that relationship incredibly warm. You heard him speak about Keir Starmer's wife and the respect he has for her, and now that he's met her, how much more he thinks of Prime Minister Starmer. I thought they were really sort of lovely, very, very human emotions. And I think it puts Starmer in a good place vis-a-vis, those, if you recall the relationship between Margaret and Ronald Reagan, the ability to sort of speak together off the record in an incredibly close way, really just cements the relationship even further. But as I say, it's always worth remembering, your audience remembering, that the United Kingdom institutions, whether it's our military, our intelligence institutions, are very much in lockstep with the United States institutions themselves.
And Trump has said again and again and again, his favourite word is tariff. Can you give me a brief explanation for our viewers at home at what a tariff is and who actually pays for it?
Look, as an ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer, I have to say I was initially, one, worried and sceptical about the tariff policy, as it was referred to in the US, that President Trump decided to really go after in his second term, where he very much felt that by raising tariffs on pretty much the rest of the world, he wanted to I guess, recalibrate or bring back an equilibrium that would essentially favor the United States, or at least get some payback for the United States that he felt had gone on for far too long the other way around, i.e. the US essentially enriching the rest of the world through its buying power, through its consumer, the American consumer. I was skeptical because ultimately tariff policy leads to inflation in an economy, so within America. That hasn't happened. And the other reason I was skeptical is I thought actually it would be very difficult to persuade some of the bigger blocs in the world, the bigger economies, to negotiate an advantageous deal with the US. But he's proved me wrong. You look at what he's just delivered with Europe, it's incredibly advantageous to the United States of America, both in terms of tariff policy where the Europeans are going to have to pay 15%, we're paying 10% in the UK, but also in terms of investment in the United States, vis-a-vis buying US energy in the case of Europe. And so I think what Scott Bessent has done with, of course, the president's very much empowering him to do so, making him, making it a serious bit of policy, is looking pretty positive for President Trump. I think, it feels like he is on a bit of a roll at the moment, where not only has he been able to impact what could have been a pretty dangerous war between India and Pakistan, or some of the other peacemaking initiatives that he's embarked upon, but on the economy, it feels like a high-risk strategy that's beginning to pay off for him. And that's what strong, brave leadership looks like.
And as you just stated, the UK have got a 10% tariff. The EU has got 15%. I don't think Labour are ever going to admit this, but is this a Brexit benefit?
It certainly is. And I can tell you, as a Brexiteer, or someone who campaigned for us to be able to make more of our own decisions in the United Kingdom, I think it really is a Brexit benefit, and British business, investment in the UK from European businesses that will want to take advantage of the lower tariff with America to export into America, will pay off. And I think it would be mature of Keir Starmer and his government to at least admit that this is a good policy delivered because of Brexit.
We're going to turn to your successor now, Rachel Reeves. How do you feel that Secureomics has it been a success? Has it been a failure?
I think that Rachel Reeves is in a difficult place. I think that the budget and the increase of taxes on business is beginning to really bite. You look at the food and beverage sector, retail sector, the increase in national insurance has really hurt the prospects for employment in those sectors, and that cannot be good for the British economy. I also think she needs to rethink the non-dom policy, and I have to put my hand up and admit that it was a Conservative Chancellor in Jeremy Hunt who introduced it in the first place. I've always had a problem with this. I have a think tank in the UK called the Adam Smith Institute, where we have shown the damaging impact of wealth creators leaving the United Kingdom. And of course, they're leaving for Abu Dhabi and for Dubai, places where they can do business, they can take advantage of much lower corporate tax rates, and of course, zero income tax rates, as well as the issue around safety. People are worried about the level of crime in England, in London. But as far as the Chancellor is concerned, I think she'd be wise to look at what Italy has done with a flat tax of 200,000 euros to attract wealth creators into Milan and other cities. And I think at some point, the Treasury will need to look at how we inject growth into the British economy, because the last budget did the opposite of that.
And just touching on crime, my own brother has had his phone stolen twice in London over the past, say, 3 months. This is a common occurrence in the UK now. Having, as well, I have to be fair, the Tories were in power for 14 years. Why does it seem that European countries, as well as in America, they seem to have lost control over crime and punishment?
Look, I agree with you. I think if the equation in the mind of a criminal is that they can get away with their misdemeanor, their crime, without consequence, without punishment, then you're going to see much greater crime. I remember visiting New York when Giuliani was mayor of that great city, and the no broken glass theory, where if you come down hard on petty crime, whether it be graffiti or phone theft, then you avoid some of the more serious crimes as well. And I think that our cities, London in particular, has been suffering from a lack of focus, in my view, of both the Police and Crime Commissioner, who happens to be the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, but also the focus of the police force on investigating and actually punishing criminals for those petty crimes. I think I saw a report that the UK accounts for something like 1 in 6 or 1 in 5 phones that are being sold in Asia. And sadly, your brother is one of those victims. So it is a problem. I think it will play, quite a significant part in both local elections coming up next year and national elections in 3 years' time. And this government needs to do something about it. And as I say, look, it is up to the Mayor of London, the Police and Crime Commissioners up and down the country to focus and prioritise crime versus other work that the police does. And I think people will vote accordingly. It really is a problem. And when I talk to people wealth creators who've moved to the UAE, it's not just the advantageous tax system. It is the sense of community, the sense of feeling safe that you won't have your wallet stolen, your expensive watch or your mobile phone stolen without consequence.
And going back to elections, as you just said, we've seen that Reform are surging in the polls. They're simply just not going away. Is this a protest vote or a deeper shift to the right?
I think a couple of things are going on. One, and I warned of this on election night when Labour's victory came through, that I thought Keir Starmer announcing almost immediately that he would scrap the Rwanda policy, the deterrent, where illegal migrants coming across, some being taken advantage of, being smuggled across on these dinghies across the channel, would have been processed in Rwanda. Scrapping that deterrent would only exacerbate the situation with illegal migration. And I think what you're seeing in terms of the Reform surge is people just feeling angry, frustrated, the sense of fairness being challenged by people breaking the law, taking shortcuts to enter these shores. And I think that's another problem for Keir Starmer and this government, as well as the economy. I think the next election will be fought on both control of our borders, of course, linked to, the one thing about Nigel is he's a great communicator, Nigel Farage, that linked to the issue of illegal migration and law and order and safety on our streets with the economic impact on public services, on our health system, on education, of having to deal with this massive increase in migration, will mean that Reform stand a very, very strong chance of disrupting our political landscape. And it's incumbent on my party to be front and center in delivering solutions. And solutions are not easy. And people vote for us, for politicians, to deal with the difficult problems, to grapple with whether it be Gaza and the Palestinian long-suffering Palestinian people or crime on our streets and controlling our borders. We need to demonstrate that we have thought through solutions to these, quite knotty issues. And if we don't, then you will have parties like Reform surging and actually, winning at the ballot box.
That brings me on to my next question. Could we see Nigel Farage as Prime Minister?
Well, if you believe the polls today, and I founded YouGov, the research business that delivers many of these numbers, on the polls today, of course he can be Prime Minister and would be Prime Minister if there was an election held tomorrow. 3 years from now, the world could look very different. And, I think a Prime Minister once famously remarked that a week is a long time in politics. But I think it's incumbent on both the government to begin to offer solutions, rethink on the economy, on actually looking at what's working in other capitalist systems. Look at America, look at the achievements of Donald Trump, a deterrent on the border. Again, look at the achievement of Donald Trump on reducing illegal migration from Mexico. Will make a difference to the future outcome of a general election. But I think for my party, Kemi Badenoch is doing the right thing to think through the knotty, difficult problems and articulate solutions based on evidence is the best way forward for her.
Is it possible in your mind, in any hypothetical situation, that there will be a coalition between the Tories and Reform?
Look, I think Kemi rightly is taking her time in delivering some of those policies and not focusing on Nigel Farage or Reform, because when you focus on your opponent, you're giving them greater credibility and the additional oxygen of publicity and playing on their turf. So I think she's doing absolutely the right thing to say, I will focus on conservative solutions to these difficult problems that the nation is facing. And I think that's the right thing to do. And I think, look, it's never easy to be in opposition. You're too young to remember, but I certainly am not. The early years of Margaret Thatcher, she had a difficult first couple of years in opposition, but then she found her feet, she found her mojo, if I can describe it as that, and we ended up having a fantastic outcome for the nation, not just for my party. So I'm confident that Kemi will do that work. Needless to say, it's important to also make sure that we address some of the issues that Nigel Farage has identified, because the secret of politics is to understand where the pain is for the nation, and then to have credible solutions to deal with that challenge, to deal with that pain. And I think Kemi and the team will do that.
And speaking of Margaret Thatcher, as you did, obviously one of the main roadblocks with the immigration crisis, with the Rwanda bill being blocked in the ECHR. Do you think if Margaret was alive today and in power, she would leave the ECHR?
Yes, I do. And I tell you for why. Because I think that in many ways, we have a proud history and a track record in upholding human rights. And we have reached a stage where lawyers are using the European Court, the Convention on Human Rights, to thwart the will of the nation. And I think that a conservative government and a conservative prime minister would today look at us coming away from that convention, because it is, reaching what I would call dangerous territory in terms of people feeling that the system is being taken advantage of, that law breaking is becoming the norm, illegal. The first duty of government is the security of our borders and the protection of the realm. And I think the nation deserves a government that can deliver that. And I would absolutely believe that if Margaret were alive today, she'd feel exactly the same way.
We're just going to turn to the worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Obviously, you yourself are from Iraq and held the second highest office in the UK. What conditions is the UK setting for recognising Palestine, and how realistic is that goal?
I think Keir Starmer's position has already begun to unravel today. I think it was done for party management reasons. He was coming under huge pressure internally from Labour members of Parliament to do something that made a difference to the beleaguered Palestinian people. I don't agree with him. I think the Palestinian people have an inalienable right to statehood. And what he's done is really stood in the middle of the street because of his own internal pressures in his party, where he said, well, we'll only recognize a Palestinian state if Israel doesn't fulfill the following criteria. And I think, again, it was Margaret Thatcher who said, if you stand in the middle of the street, you're in danger of getting run over. And I think he's in a difficult place because, making announcements at a lectern doesn't deliver an outcome for the Palestinian people on the ground. My very strong view is they're being held hostage by Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization that needs to surrender its weapons and to get out of Gaza and allow the Palestinian peoples to have a future, to have a Palestinian leadership that can be supported by the region. And we should be talking to our regional allies. Take, for example, the UAE, where I think the UAE is the second largest contributor of aid on the ground in Gaza after the United States of America. Are we talking to the likes of Mohammed al-Dahlan, a Palestinian leader who defeated Hamas in the only election they ever had in Gaza, in Khan Yunis? It's all well and good to make speeches in London. Does it really deliver an outcome for the Palestinian people? I think not. And I think that Keir Starmer is going to find it very difficult to hold the line he's holding at the moment.
How do you respond to Israel's claim that this move has harmed any chance of peace talks?
Well, I think, look, anything that allows Hamas to survive and to claim victory through survival and to continue to hijack the beleaguered Palestinian people in Gaza, I think is harmful for the future of Palestine and the future of the Palestinian people. And I think that if we are serious as the United Kingdom about the future of Palestine, the future of the Palestinian people, we need to use our convening power to bring our allies, the UAE, other countries from the region, the European Union, the Palestinian leadership that has credibility with the Palestinian people to the table to have a solution for the day after. The United States must be part of that, front and center of that, to ensure that Israel feels safe and that Hamas is no longer. That is a serious piece of policy work. That's a serious piece of delivery. I don't think that's on the table at the moment. If it is, I will be the first to applaud it and support Keir Starmer. I just don't think that's where he is.
Nadhim Zahawi, the former Chancellor of the UK, Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.